Greed is a funny thing. Once you take a bite of it, it tends to turn on you and start eating you up. The industry was making enough money. The industry was growing fast enough. The industry was progressing enough.
Not many people understand why Clive Davis was so determined to get rid of Barry White. However, a few insiders were aware of a shocking discovery Barry had made during his years in the music industry. Beyond his famous, deep voice and romantic songs that became the backdrop for many love stories, Barry White had another key characteristic: fearlessness. This fearlessness was exactly what Clive Davis disliked about him the most. Davis saw Barry as more than just a talented musician, he viewed him as a threat. But what exactly was this secret that made Barry White such a target in Davis's eyes? Let's explore this mystery further. Unlike many other celebrities, Barry White did not intend to surprise anyone with his entrance into the music industry. However, once he found himself in the world of music, he quickly realized that no amount of fame could convince him to sell out. Barry had a strong moral compass and was unwilling to compromise his values, even in exchange for the immense power and wealth offered by someone like Clive Davis, a prominent music mogul of the time. Barry frequently spoke out against the greed that he believed caused many artists to lose their way. He tried to warn others about the dangers of falling into the trap of the industry's greed, but most of them ignored his advice. There were also rumors about Clive Davis's personal life. Some claimed that he had an interest in men, and it was suggested that Davis had a particular attraction to the male artists he worked with. This was made worse by the mysterious deaths of several artists under Davis's management. This raised suspicion and led some to wonder if Davis had a dark side. Barry White was particularly cautious of what he saw as the dangerous influence of people like Clive Davis. In a bid to avoid the same fate that befell others, Barry White took an extraordinary step that few black artists dared to attempt during that era. He established his own music label. He became a force in the music world, not only by writing songs, singing, and producing, but also acting in films. He became a true hustler and was rewarded for his efforts.
Don't gloss over it. You got into a lot of trouble at one point, or your friends did. You hung around with a bad crowd.
That's true. That's very true.
What straightened you out?
The bad crowd. I guess when I turned 17, I looked around me, and everywhere I looked, it was depression, people who were just going around in circles. I just felt that it was a better way of life. I had to make a change or go down.
However, after winning 2 Grammy Awards, things took an unexpected turn for Barry that would silence him permanently, just as Clive Davis had hoped. Barry White was born on September 12, 1944, in Texas. His parents, Marie Carter and Melvin White, were never married. This was because Melvin had a wife when he started a relationship with Barry's mother, a fact that Marie discovered much later. Upon finding out his father's name, Barry quickly removed his mother's last name, Carter, from his birth certificate and replaced it with his father's surname, White. Barry grew up in south-central Los Angeles, California, where he was immersed in the rough streets of the area.
Voice actually changed.
I woke up one morning when I was 14, and
You woke up?
I spoke to my mother, and I scared both of us.
He was the oldest of 2 children, with his younger brother, Daryl, always by his side. Together, they got into a lot of trouble and were arrested several times. Daryl was even sent to juvenile detention at the age of just 8. Despite the difficult circumstances, Barry and his brother continued to get involved in more dangerous activities. Tragically, Daryl's life was cut short due to a gang-related dispute, although some reports say the cause was actually a disagreement over $20 with a neighbor. This event deeply affected Barry, and in his autobiography, Love Unlimited: Insights on Life and Love, he described the deep connection he had with his brother. He wrote that no one could truly understand the bond they shared. After Daryl's passing, Barry struggled to comprehend why his brother had taken one path while he took another. The loss of his brother marked a turning point in Barry's life. Music became his way out of the dangerous life he had been living. At first, he didn't immediately leave the streets behind after Daryl's death, and Barry continued to get into trouble. In 1960, at the age of 16, Barry was arrested for stealing Cadillac tires and was sentenced to 4 months in jail. It was during this time that something clicked for Barry. He heard Elvis Presley's "It's Now or Never" on the radio, and at that moment, something inside him shifted. Barry realized he needed to leave the streets behind because it wasn't the life he wanted to lead.
With record companies, when I say people, I'm talking about executives, and so many companies are folding because of taping. How do you survive, a black man with a black company?
I am not excluded from that nightmare of piracy and bootlegging. I look at it like this, Jay. When man becomes disenchanted with just making a living, when he turns to greed, it kills him every time.
2 years later, on his 18th birthday, Barry made another pivotal decision. Instead of going to school, he walked to Capitol Records headquarters in Hollywood, staring at the building for hours, contemplating his future. He was determined to become part of the music industry. Although he didn't know how to read or write music at the time, Barry had grown up listening to his mother's collection of classical music, and he would often practice the pieces he heard on the piano she had bought for him. Rumor had it that Barry White had played the piano for Jesse Belvin's "Goodnight, My Love." Barry's voice began to change when he was 13 years old. He recalled that his voice, once high-pitched and squeaky, deepened dramatically, which surprised both him and his mother. By the time he turned 14, his voice was so deep that it startled both of them whenever he spoke. Barry eventually left the gang life behind, and in 1960, he began his musical career, singing in different groups. He worked for several small independent labels in Los Angeles and even recorded some of his first songs in the early 1960s. He released "Too Far to Turn Around" and sang backup with groups like the Atlantics and the Majestics. Barry's music was heavily influenced by legendary artists such as James Cleveland, Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin, and Marvin Gaye. Barry's early years in the music business were not without challenges. He struggled with his relationship with his father, and like Marvin Gaye, Barry White never truly bonded with his father. However, this did not stop Barry from pushing forward. In 1965, Barry produced "Feel Alright" by the Ben Cantos, which was released by Downey Records. In 1966, he produced "Man Ain't Nothin' and I Don't Need It." Barry's true breakthrough came when he discovered Phyllis Taylor and arranged her song "I Feel Love Coming On," which became a huge hit in the UK. By 1969, Barry White was signed to Forward Records as a producer. 3 years later, he formed his own group, Love Unlimited, and it was a significant moment in Barry's career. In 1973, he formed the Love Unlimited Orchestra, a 40-piece band that would support his musical ventures. However, Barry had bigger plans. That same year, he released Love's Theme, which became a #1 hit on the Billboard pop charts. Barry didn't stop there. In the mid-1970s, he wanted to work with a male artist, and while working on demos for another singer, his label insisted that he record the songs himself as a solo artist. After some persuasion, Barry gave in, and he became a solo performer. His song "I'm Gonna Love You Just a Little More Baby" reached #1 on the R&B charts and #3 on the Billboard pop charts. His career soared, and he went on to release even more successful songs and albums. In 1979, Barry White left 20th Century Records and launched his own label, Unlimited Gold, under CBS/Columbia Records. Though things seemed to be going well at first, Barry's success started to falter with the end of the disco era, and he was no longer achieving the same level of success as before. His label venture also drained his finances, and Barry was forced to focus on touring. Eventually, he folded his label in 1991, but things took a turn for the better when he released Put Me in Your Mix in 1994. That album was a major success, and Barry was back on top. His single Practice What You Preach became his first #1 R&B single in almost 2 decades. In 1999, Barry White released his final album, Staying Power, which earned him 2 Grammy Awards. Barry White was not only a talented musician, but he also dabbled in acting. He appeared in a 1995 Prodigy commercial and did voiceover work for shows like The Simpsons and King of the Hill. Throughout his career, Barry White tried to warn other artists about the dangers of the music industry. He cautioned them about the sacrifices they might have to make for fame and success. One of the artists he tried to warn was Luther Vandross, who had signed with Clive Davis in 1981. Luther, like Barry, went on to achieve major success, but it came at a great cost. Eventually, whispers about Luther's sexuality began to circulate, and after his death, his friends confirmed that he was, indeed, gay. Luther's health issues, including diabetes and complications from a stroke, affected his ability to perform and record. Despite support from friends like Whitney Houston, Luther's mental and physical health deteriorated, and he passed away at the age of 54. Barry White, too, faced his own health challenges and passed away in 2004 at the age of 58 due to heart-related issues. Clive Davis, on the other hand, is still alive today, and he will be turning 100 in a few years. However, suspicions surrounding his involvement in the music industry continue to circulate. Many people still wonder whether Clive Davis had any role in the untimely deaths of artists like Barry White and Luther Vandross. What are your thoughts? Do you think Clive Davis had any involvement in these artists' early deaths? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Released his final album, Staying Power, which earned him 2 Grammy Awards. Barry White was not only a talented musician, but he also dabbled in acting. He appeared in a 1995 Prodigy commercial and did voiceover work for shows like The Simpsons and King of the Hill. Throughout his career, Barry White tried to warn other artists about the dangers of the music industry. He cautioned them about the sacrifices they might have to make for fame and success. One of the artists he tried to warn was Luther Vandross, who had signed with Clive Davis in 1981. Luther, like Barry, went on to achieve major success, but it came at a great cost. Eventually, whispers about Luther's sexuality began to circulate, and after his death, his friends confirmed that he was, indeed, gay. Luther's health issues, including diabetes and complications from a stroke, affected his ability to perform and record. Despite support from friends like Whitney Houston, Luther's mental and physical health deteriorated, and he passed away at the age of 54. Barry White, too, faced his own health challenges and passed away in 2004 at the age of 58 due to heart-related issues. Clive Davis, on the other hand, is still alive today, and he will be turning 100 in a few years. However, suspicions surrounding his involvement in the music industry continue to circulate. Many people still wonder whether Clive Davis had any role in the untimely deaths of artists like Barry White and Luther Vandross. What are your thoughts? Do you think Clive Davis had any involvement in these artists' early deaths? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below.